Welcome. Today, we're looking at a massive, invisible mathematical engine that we literally all participate in every single day without even realizing it. I mean, think about it. Every time you stand in a grocery aisle comparing prices or, hold off on buying that new gadget until it goes on sale, you are feeding this exact engine. Our goal today is to completely demystify what actually drives our purchasing decisions according to textbook economics. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for the explainer. 1. Wish versus economic demand. 2. The flavors of demand. 3. The law of demand. 4. Beyond the price tag. And 5. Why curves slope down. We're going to take you from basic definitions right into the really complex mechanics of human behavior.
Section 1. Wish versus economic demand. Be honest with me for a second. How many of you desire a brand new state-of-the-art 80-inch television set, right? I know I absolutely do. But here's the critical question. Does you simply wanting that TV create any actual economic demand? Like, does it impact the market or make the manufacturer produce more of them?
Well, the short answer is no. In economics, words have very specific meanings. A desire is just a wish. It's daydreaming. True economic demand is what we call an effective desire. And for that to happen, it requires 3 vital ingredients to align: the desire itself, the absolute willingness to part with your hard-earned cash, and, crucially, the actual financial ability to pay for it at that specific time. Got no cash? Your wish just stays a wish.
And this brilliantly illustrates the concept in action. Think of it like a 3-legged stool. You need the thought bubble, the desire. You need the intention to actually hand over the money, the willingness. And you need the wallet with the purchasing power, the ability. Only when all 3 of these pillars stand together, during a particular time frame and at a specific price, does your wish magically transform into powerful, market-moving economic demand.
Section 2. The flavors of demand.
Because, as you might guess, demand isn't just a simple one-size-fits-all concept. Depending on who's buying and why they're buying, demand comes in quite a few different flavors. For instance, depending on the buyer, we have individual demand, which is just your personal household shopping list, versus market demand, which is basically everyone's list combined. We also have to separate what you plan to buy, called ex ante, from what you actually walk out of the store with, which is exposed. And sometimes items are hopelessly linked in joint demand. That's where 2 things are needed together to satisfy a single want, like a car and petrol. You literally can't use one without the other.
But out of all these flavors, derived demand is particularly fascinating. See, producers don't go out and buy tons of steel, bricks, or cement just because they enjoy having them around. They don't get direct satisfaction from a pile of bricks, right? They demand those materials strictly because consumers demand houses and buildings. So the demand for the raw material is entirely derived from the demand for that final product.
Section 3. The law of demand. Now that we've nailed down what demand actually is, we are ready for the core mathematical engine that predicts our consumer behavior. Assuming all other factors remain equal, the law of demand states that the quantity of a commodity increases when its price falls and decreases when its price rises. It is a fundamental, rock-solid inverse relationship. Take a look at this schedule for apples. When the price is super high at 100 rupees, the consumer only buys 1 kilogram. But as the price steadily drops to 90, then 80, then 70, just watch what happens to the quantity. It steadily rises to 2, then 4, and finally 6 kilograms. Basically, the cheaper it gets, the more we want.
Let's move on and see how this builds into the famous downward-sloping demand curve. When you visualize that exact data from the table, you get a perfect representation of that inverse relationship. From the top left all the way down to the bottom right, as the price goes down on the vertical axis, the quantity we demand goes up on the horizontal axis.
Section 4. Beyond the price tag. Because, let's be real, if price were the only thing that mattered, economics would be a breeze. But real life is a lot messier. While price is definitely the primary determinant causing movement up and down along our curve, there are other massive external levers that can physically shift our entire demand curve to the left or the right. Things like the income in our wallets or the prices of related goods sitting on the shelf next to it.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how exactly our income shapes our shopping carts. You might assume that as we get richer, we just automatically buy more of absolutely everything. But our shopping carts actually follow 3 very different trajectories as our paychecks grow. Notice the normal goods trajectory moving upwards, the inferior goods curving back on itself, and the inexpensive necessities hitting a strict vertical wall.
Let's completely ground this in reality by tackling a huge core question. Do Giffen goods and inferior goods mean the exact same thing? The answer is a massive resounding no. To understand why, let's use a clear two-point framework. Point 1. Definitions and core mechanics. For normal goods, like nice new clothes, higher income simply equals higher demand. But inferior goods are strictly income-driven in the opposite direction. There's an inverse relationship between your income and demand. Then we have the ultimate price-driven paradox, Giffen goods. A Giffen good is a special subcategory of highly inferior goods, where you spend a large part of your income, and incredibly, its demand falls when the price falls and rises when the price rises. It's a direct upward-sloping exception to the law of demand. So our golden rule for point 1 is, all Giffen goods are inferior goods, but all inferior goods are not Giffen goods. Okay, point 2. Let's look at some step-by-step examples. The classic textbook baseline is coarse grains, like maize or jowar. In an inferior goods scenario, when a poor consumer's income rises, they stop buying cheap, coarse grains and they upgrade to superior staples like wheat or fine rice. Demand for maize drops because income went up. But here is the Giffen good price paradox. If the price of coarse maize drops, the poor consumer's real income, their purchasing power, suddenly increases. Because they now feel richer, they actually don't buy more cheap maize. Instead, they cut back on maize so they can finally afford a small bag of wheat. Conversely, if the price of maize rises, their real income drops so badly they can no longer afford any wheat at all. To literally survive, they have to drop the wheat completely and buy even more maize, driving demand up as the price goes up. Still a bit abstract? Let's use an out-of-the-box analogy, the college canteen budget. Imagine a student on a strict 100 rupee weekly lunch budget. Their regular diet is 4 days of 20 rupee instant local noodles, which is our inferior good, and 1 day of a 20 rupee premium cafe sandwich, our superior good. First, the inferior good effect where income rises. If their allowance increases to 200 rupees, they ditch the instant noodles entirely and eat premium sandwiches every single day. Demand for instant noodles drops because income went up. But now, the Giffen good price drop effect where price drops. Imagine their allowance stays at 100 rupees, but the price of instant noodles drops from 20 rupees to just 10 rupees. Suddenly, buying their usual 4 packs of noodles only costs 40 rupees instead of 80. They have 60 rupees left over. Feeling rich, they absolutely don't buy more noodles. They use their extra cash to buy 3 premium sandwiches and cut their noodle purchases down to just 1 pack. The price of noodles dropped, so their demand for noodles dropped. And finally, the Giffen good effect where price rises. If the price of noodles goes up from 20 to 22 rupees, they can no longer afford any 20 rupee sandwiches if they want to stay full all 5 days. They are forced to cancel the sandwich completely and spend all 100 rupees on 4.5 packs of noodles. The price of noodles went up, so they ended up buying more noodles. It's a total paradox, but it perfectly explains the difference between the income effect and the real income price paradox.
Wow, right? Okay, zooming back out, we also have to consider the ripple effect of related goods. When looking at substitutes like coffee and tea, if the price of coffee suddenly shoots up, people instantly substitute it, causing the demand for tea to rise. But when looking at complements, things used together, like cars and petrol, it's totally different. If the price of petrol skyrockets, people don't want to drive as much, which inversely crashes the demand for cars. Everything in this engine is connected.
Section 5. Why curves slope down.
We've seen the math, we've explored the crazy exceptions, and we know the external levers. But why exactly does human behavior force that normal demand curve downwards? So the crucial point is that it all comes down to 4 invisible forces. It starts with diminishing marginal utility. Basically, the more you consume, the less satisfaction you get from the next unit, so you're only going to buy that 3rd or 4th apple if it's cheaper. Then there's the income effect. Cheaper apples mean you spend less to get the same amount, making you feel richer and able to buy more. Add in the substitution effect, where you naturally ditch expensive fruits for the now cheaper apples. And finally, when prices drop drastically, entirely new consumers who previously couldn't afford apples suddenly enter the market.
And that brings us to the core truth of this whole explainer. These charts and graphs aren't just cold, boring math. They are a mirror. Our endless search for maximum satisfaction literally dictates the shape of the entire global economy. So the next time you're standing in an aisle debating a price tag, I want you to ask yourself, are you really making a free choice? Or are you just beautifully following the invisible math of the law of demand?
Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the world around you.